This is Health UnaBASHed, broadcasting live on Healthcare Now Radio. Health UnaBASHed is where healthcare meets innovation, insight, and impact. We engage top industry minds to explore the future of health and wellness, from visionary thinking to sustainable models, policy reform to frontline delivery, and ultimately the real-world impact on public health. I'm Greg Masters, co-host and executive producer, alongside my partner in conversation, the ever-curious digital health aficionado, author, editor, global thought leader, and industry steward, Gil Bash. Together, we bring you the people, ideas, and movements reshaping healthcare, not with hype, but with purpose and persistence. Now, with no further delay, Gil, the mic is yours.
Greg, as always, the most gracious introduction. I want to thank you. I want to thank you also for introducing our wonderful guest today. We have Sam Chung with us from the California Life Sciences Association, obviously California-based organization representing the life science industry, obviously one of the state's most precious sort of economic centers. They issued a very, very important statement yesterday. Sam and I are going to explore that a little bit, what it means. He's really someone who's very, very, very suited to speak to this issue, and we're going to talk about that. We're broadcasting live from Bio right now, so it's a combination of innovation, policy, politics, patient advocacy. All of that is being discussed. And Sam, I want to welcome you here.
Thank you,
and I want to thank you for zipping over from your last session. I understand you were on the panel you were presenting just a few moments ago.
It was. It was a great panel moderated by the Governor's Office of Economic Development. So we are proud to be a panelist there represented. We talked about our sector report, which was recently put out last month, to paint the picture of what our industry currently looks like, the state of play, and some of the headwinds that we're facing, some of the troubling trends that we think our elected officials and elected leaders need to be aware of. And I think the main message in that panel is that our leadership in biomedical innovation and research is not guaranteed. And that is the key thing we want our lawmakers
and that was
to
your
understand.
statement, really. That,
yes.
Look, we have on the floor at this conference, we have people from Abu Dhabi, we have people from Saudi Arabia, we have people from Jordan, United Kingdom, Ireland, Scotland, Germany, France. All of these countries are, their trade associations are here. They're looking for partnerships. They're looking for companies to make a move from the United States to plant themselves elsewhere. Your statement actually dealt with one very powerful nation that makes long-term investments, is very interested in the sciences, China.
Yes.
And if I understand correctly, the California Life Sciences Association issued a very, I would say, clear counsel to people here that, as you mentioned, our leadership in California, the United States, is not guaranteed. That other countries are now understanding, particularly in the age of biotechnology, where you don't need vast manufacturing facilities. You actually need to have really good talent. That talent is busy at work in other nations of the world. China. Yeah. Why did you single out China?
Well, California is home to one of the most productive life sciences ecosystems in the world. We are very proud of this ecosystem when it comes to rare disease innovation. I mean, a third of all rare disease drugs out there in the market have started out of California. So we are providing hope for patients around the world who want to enter into our clinical trials for that breakthrough. Now, China has made it very well known that they would like to take the mantle of being the new global leaders in biomedical innovation. And they have made vast strides over the last decade. And while historically we used to see China as emulators, now they have shed that, and now they are on par with us, I believe, in the scientific discovery capabilities. And it has come from a very intentional decision by the Chinese government to invest in R&D, to advance these startup biotech companies to really accelerate research and enter them into clinical trials as quickly as possible to get their medicines approved.
Well, is there a specific reason why they're doing it now? Is there a catalyst for this? Because look, New Jersey, obviously, I think the life science industry is the state's largest private manufacturing employer.
Mm-hmm.
Boston, no doubt about it, the biotech industry dominates the Cambridge, Boston, Bay Area. You know that data. San Diego. This is an industry that throws off a tremendous amount of prosperity, just in terms of the types of people they employ, the amounts of money that they're paid, and the concentration with the academic medical centers that California has, for instance, Stanford, the UCLA type system, UC system. All of that become effectively incubators for bold ideas that are privatized. Is China actually able to replicate the infrastructure that you have in California?
I don't think they can replicate all of the infrastructure when it comes to the talent. Our research hospitals, those are California things that cannot be replicated easily. And now China, I think, has other advantages that they are leaning into. But the key is they want the clinical trust. They want that clinical research happening on their side of the border, because that, as you mentioned, is the economic multiplier effect, the talent. Everything moves to where the innovation is happening. And so if China can get out there and lure in venture capital and lure in California talent, they know that more and more momentum will go across our borders to their border. And we are already seeing China make intentional moves as the federal government vacillates on NIH funding, SBIR, STTR. These are signals to our biggest competitor, China, to approach our academic institutions, our PhD programs, and offer them sometimes 20 years of funding, stable funding. Our scientists and researchers can continue to do their research here in California, but they will be funded and financed by China. And obviously that intellectual property now belongs to China. And that's a huge concern for us. We want to make sure our values, our American and California values, when it comes to health, when it comes to patients, that is being preserved here in America. And that's very, very important to us. And we don't want to tell patients you have to go to Beijing to get that cancer treatment. We want to do it here where we have the safeguards, we have the infrastructure to make sure patients are going to be safe, that our medicines are going to be effective. And so we want to make sure that our ecosystem continues to be as vibrant as it can without the encroachment of other countries who may have different values.
For years, talented people from China came to the United States to get their higher education, their PhDs, chemistry, and so forth. And then, of course, the visa situation has changed in the last, let's say, 18 months radically. It's very difficult to get that academic visa for the PhDs. It's very difficult for people who are postdoc to be able to secure, a position here in the United States. Is that also contributing to China's sort of saying, gee, if our people can't train there, then maybe we can take the generations of people who did train there and create this sort of environment or academic institutions that attract the best and brightest of our nation to remain in China and to pursue their careers there. Have we unintentionally created in this country a perfect storm that allows other nations to effectively compete with us on the academic level, on the investment level, on the applied research level? In other words, is our concern, without getting into the political aspects, is our concern China, or is it the environment that we're creating that is allowing other nations in the world to say, we can now effectively compete with the United States?
I do think that's part of the equation for sure. And we have to control what we can control, which is the regulatory and policy environment in which this ecosystem operates in. And so when venture capital, like let's take, for example, California life sciences venture capital firms, there's a handful of them.
Well, Perkins-Elmer, you have some of the greatest venture capital firms in the world are based in the Bay Area.
Bay Area, correct. That's exactly right. And we are seeing them move more money and investing in Chinese-based biotech startups than here in California. And we take that personally. That's offensive to us that they're seeing less risk in investing in those Chinese biotech startups because they have a regulatory process, they have a clinical trials process that's more efficient and less costly.
Well, it's
and
easier for them to
predictable.
recruit into trials.
Correct. And then so the return on investment is more assured and quicker. Biotech already in the United States is already a very, very tough sector to invest in. High failure rate. The amount of time it takes for us to get through clinical trials, we're talking about 12 to 15 years, $2.6 billion per medicine. And so and then it takes a long time then to recover that investment back. And so it's already a risky sector to invest in. Now, if you layer on a regulatory environment that makes it so tough, the risk index moves so far in one direction that our venture capital folks who our startup companies rely on, they would rather invest across seas. And so that is something of our own making. And that is something that I think we need to change. And that's why we are so supportive of what HHS has put out as far as streamlining to make it more efficient for the early stage clinical trials for that to move quicker.
So you were talking about the policy statement you issued yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just, for our listeners, just give a summary of the policy statement? Because you really deal with the balance between federal policy and state policy and the threat to the state's economy.
Yeah. And so when we look at China, like they can get through their clinical trials process in under 5 years. In the United States, if we're lucky, we're talking about at least 8 years. And that is a burdensome, timely situation that we have to confront. And so it was so important for us to see the biggest differentiator between us and China in that clinical trials process. What is the most expensive part of R&D? And it's that clinical trials process. So we wanted to make sure our policymakers really micro-target, laser focus on things that are making it harder for us to compete.
The friction of getting stuff done.
Exactly. And so that is something that I think this was a great first step. The recognition and the acknowledgement that this is a big challenge for our industry and that our leadership in the biomedical space is significantly hampered as a result of it. And so our statement on that was to continue to encourage that way of thinking, because we've been raising the alarms around the gap that's being closed so quickly. And in some markers, China has surpassed us. And so we wanted to make sure it's too late, because once we give up our leadership, it's going to take generations for us to take it back. And so we want to do everything possible to avoid that situation. And that it was the heart and the thrust of our statement to say, hey, that is a great first step, a monumental first step, but we need to continue to make those reforms at the FDA level. We need to continue to collectively say, hey, we are taking a stand and we want to keep our leadership in this space here in the United States.
So much of this deals not only with the patient expectation standpoint. People have, people need new treatments, whether it's to improve their condition or to resolve a very critical problem. How much of the state's economy is really driven by the health sector?
Oh, it's massive. The life sciences is the second largest sector in California. $400 billion in economic output. We generate 1 million jobs every year. And so we are an economic driver in California, no doubt. But we are seeing some troubling signs when it comes to venture capital investment in our startup companies. And that is, I think, the first ripple that can, if we don't address it, can take us down in the wrong direction, potentially permanently. Right here in San Diego, where this bioconvention is being held, we saw from last year to this year a 34% drop off in venture capital coming into San Diego. For
this city, that's massive.
That is huge, because San Diego is the #1 life sciences startup hub in the nation. More venture capital historically has come to San Diego than anywhere in the nation. And we're proud of that. We have Salks, we have Scripps, we have UC San Diego, great talent coming into San Diego. But this venture capital drop-off is very, very concerning to us. And we're seeing a lot of these life sciences facilities in this region now almost completely vacant. And that's a troubling sign for us, because that's a ripple that'll go to the entire
empty real
ecosystem.
estate is one of the other indicators. It's dollars, it's empty real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So the other question I have, you talked about before, the sense of patients going to China. Now, I don't know if that would happen. I imagine medications that go through the Chinese review process obviously are not approved in the United States. They need to demonstrate or file with the FDA for FDA to review the data. But Also, FDA has representatives in China that look at Chinese manufacturing facilities and approve them as FDA compliant. Is there some conversation in terms of, are we making it easy for the Chinese government to compete with the U.S. government or California specifically on a parity basis? In other words, have we set up the dynamic that, hey, proceed that we're going to review the manufacturing, we're clearing your manufacturing facilities, we'll look at your data. If it's for a rare disease, we'll accept your data, and all of a sudden it is a full-blown competitive output. California life sciences versus China's life science sector, and the winner is the patient to some extent with that competition, ideally.
Yes, and at the end of the day, all the innovation that we do is for the patient, and so that is where it does become difficult for us as an industry, because our scientists and researchers will go to wherever the innovation is or where it's happening. And so if China comes up with something that is promising, where it makes sense for the patient, for that drug or that device to be developed, we're going to go do it. And so, yes, from a macro perspective, we want it happening in the United States. But right now, we're going head to head. But there's amazing stuff that is coming out of China.
Right.
Our companies are going to partner with scientists and researchers out there.
Just tuning in, you're right on time for Health Unabashed on Healthcare Now Radio. Stay tuned. Plenty of thought-provoking insights yet to share.
So you could see like Amgen or Genentech making sort of like a collaborative move to their partners in China, just saying, how about we co-develop this? You design trials, we also design trials. Same trial, we execute here, you execute there. Obviously, we can be your sales and marketing. On one hand, it's a danger for jobs. On the other hand, it could be a boon for people who are really waiting for answers to their clinical needs.
Yeah, and that's the balance. And but when push comes to shove, we're going to err on the side of patients. And
well, that's your job is obviously to represent an industry. I mean, that's what you're effectively a industry trade association, and that's your job. And I'm pleased to see that also you recognize that the output might be valuable to the people science serves the patient.
Yeah, and our scientists and researchers, they wake up every day with that common goal of helping patients. And so while we're going to be opportunistic about where that innovation is happening, we're going to partner with whoever is ahead and where we can get that product across the finish line. But at the same time, we're keeping an eye on what are we doing in America, what are we doing in California to create the best environment possible so that our homegrown scientists and researchers stay here, they stay in our community, and we partner with the amazing infrastructure and the talent and the companies and the clusters that are already here. We don't want that to increasingly be shifted over to our competitors. And so while companies will partner where it makes sense right now in the short term for patients, we need to keep an eye on our leadership role and the regulatory environment that's required for us to continue leading.
Have you had any response since you issued the statement from government of China or from any sort of like organizational element from the Chinese government based in
Have not received anything from China, but we know our statement has gone to the White House, it has gone to Dr. Oz, it has gone to HHS, and so we want to continue to be a part of the solution and a partner in making sure that these types of policy decisions continue to advance. Right now, it's in a pilot program type mode, but we want to see this continue to expand. And we also, while that's happening at the federal level, in California, there's a whole slew of policies and investment decisions by government that needs to follow suit. And so one of the things that we're concerned about is on the heels of this biotech convention, where we have governors and innovators from all over the world coming together here in San Diego, we have this governor and this state legislature in Sacramento that has decided post-2030, we're going to be divesting in biotech by capping R&D tax credits moving forward after 2030. That's a huge signal that where our industry isn't being valued, the crown jewel sector in California, the birthplace of biotech, deciding to divest from biotech. That, in my mind, is
what's the thinking process or catalyst, considering Genentech and companies like that really put California on the map in terms of being a state for advanced. You're facing a lot of challenges. I mean, obviously the challenge from the Chinese life science sector is one of many. We start to talk about tax credits and the value of an industry and creating a sense of, in a high-risk industry, how do you create a sense of security for investors? And if investors feel that the deck is stacked against them, they have to deploy capital. They have to put capital into active work. They look for industries that have a good return on investment with less risk. You're seeing that in California right now. Is that correct?
We are seeing that in California. So we're getting hit in all different directions. On the federal side, we had all the instability and around NIH funding.
Which has not come back.
Yes, and that is contributing to, when venture capital looks at where they want to invest, that NIH money is so important to de-risk a lot of the riskiest research that our academic institutions are taking on. And without that de-risking, you're making it very, very difficult for venture capital to say, you know what, I'm going to commit for the next 10 years funding XYZ over $50 million, $100 million. Like that's just not realistic. So that's on the federal front. And then on the state front, we see the yo-yoing back and forth of state incentives. The R&D tax credit, our industry is the most aggressive users in the R&D tax credit. Most of our companies, upwards of 70% of that R&D tax credit dollars are used to hire scientists and researchers. And so these are direct jobs, employment, tax base. And so when those things all start going away, you are chipping away at the very foundations of our ecosystem. When venture capital pulls back, when NIH funding pulls back, when the state, while China on one hand is committed $500 billion a year in R&D, our state is going in the opposite direction. We have governors here at this convention hawking their incentives to bring more biotech.
Well, we see
into
every
the industry.
single state in the nation seems to have an exhibit on the floor of this California conference.
Yes.
So I've seen everything from Kansas to Iowa, of all places, sort of trying to attract the industry here.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It's a clean industry.
It's a very clean.
It's a high science, and I think every state that has great medical institutions, academic medical centers, and really good universities that are pumping out exceptional PhDs, candidates, see themselves as, we'll create a park for high innovation, and we'll give you tax credits, we'll give you, we'll help you find land, we'll help you build office buildings, all of that. I mean, New Jersey faces this challenge, California faces this challenge. Just curious, is there a particular place they're fleeing to?
Well, we are seeing there's a lot of low-cost states where, especially biotech startups, they need to extend their lifeline as long as possible, their runway as long as possible. So they'll go to states that offer lower cost of living, less burdens when it comes to employment, labor laws, compliance. And so there are states like North Carolina where they do have that research triangle, where they have that infrastructure.
I would say even Tennessee, Nashville.
Yes. We're seeing a lot of that.
Vanderbilt University Medical Center is one of the best in the nation. I think there are something like 2,000 some odd startups, mostly in the health innovation, health information area. But I mean, I'm sure that they could tack on. You've got Meharry Medical College. You've got, all of these great schools right there in the greater Nashville area.
Right,
So,
and the other states are recognizing, and this is why every state's economic development plan is anchored around bringing life sciences, bringing biotech into their state. Because when we plant our flag somewhere, the amount of investment in people, in the infrastructure, in the labs, these are significant investments that we expect to do year after year after year for long periods of time. And I'm not trying to bash on Hollywood. They're obviously a big part of California's identity, but they set up shop somewhere. They shoot a scene for 6 months. They fold up their tents and they're gone. So that economic multiplier effect also goes with them.
but you stay.
Yeah, we stay. We're in it for the long haul.
It's fascinating that we're talking about this in terms of of this, because private equity isn't necessarily loyal to California. They're loyal to their limited partners.
Yes.
The limited partners have put in money into the funds, and they expect a return on investment. They don't care if it comes from, again, Nevada or it comes from California.
Yeah.
They want a return on investment. So on one hand, you're competing with 49 other states, plus or minus.
Right.
And then you have this behemoth across the Pacific Ocean.
Correct.
That understands exactly what's going on. I'm curious, is California also for, in terms of academic excellence from people from China, looking at schools, Stanford, the UC system and so forth, is there a disproportionate amount of people coming from China hoping to sort of enter into the US academic system, and then after securing that degree, saying, I'm going back to China, that's where the jobs are, that's where the money is?
That's certainly, I don't know the data and the statistics around that, but that definitely seems to be a concern from the White House. And so they've promulgated some rules around that. But, we, regardless where the talent is, we have the academic infrastructure to continue to attract the best in the world. And we are proud of that. But we want to create an environment where they want to stay. And if our companies, if the investors are going elsewhere, so if the clinical trials are happening in China, that's where things are going to flow. And so we want to make sure we're doing what we can to make it as enticing as possible for that talent, those students to stay here.
This sounds like it was just a perfect moment for obviously you knew it was coming, but Bio to hold its meeting here in San Diego at this time where so much is happening for the industry that you are dedicated to representing.
Yes.
It was like the perfect foundation. Any more announcements we should expect from the association?
We're going to continue to work on being a collective voice. I think this moment requires our industry to be very vocal about the importance of what our scientists and researchers do every day and the patients around the world who depend upon the innovation that comes out of the state. And so that is going to be our biggest voice, our biggest cry to our elected leaders here in California and in DC. And we want to make sure our role here is not taken for granted. I think it's easy because we have always been here where innovation's happening.
No doubt about it. The industry here has changed lives around the world, and I hope that it continues to do so. Sam, I want to thank you for joining us on Health Unabashed. I want to wish you a successful conference, but particularly because your advocacy presence is so important to the industry here.
Thank you,
and we can only hope that you continue to succeed for the patients that the companies represent.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say our piece.
Absolutely. Great statement yesterday.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yep.
And that, dear listeners, wraps another thought-provoking conversation here on Health Unabashed. A heartfelt thank you to our global audience for joining us and to our guests. Health Unabashed streams live on Healthcare Now Radio Monday through Friday at 10:30 a.m., 6:30 p.m., and 2:30 a.m. Eastern. That's 7:30 a.m., 3:30 p.m., and 11:30 p.m. Pacific. Want to stay connected? Follow Gil at Gil_Bash, and that's BASHE, and me, Greg Masters, MPH, on Twitter, and that's Greg with 2 G's. Tag your insights and feedback using the hashtag HealthUnabashed. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep raising your voice with no apologies.